Hello, Liberal Paul. I want to thank you for making a donation to such a worthy cause. The 2020 campaign to re-elect President Trump. I kid, I kid, I kid. Did I give you a heart attack? No, please, I promise you. This has nothing to do with that son of a bitch. Honestly. All right? I apologize if I frightened you. You know what I'm going to do for you? Back in the day when I was a Catskills entertainer, you had to have all kinds of talents, sing, dance, lick your balls, and do impressions. Well, here's my impression of Donald Trump. People should wash their hands. That's very important because otherwise people are going to get the Chinaman virus on their hands. And then you can't touch your face because then the virus joins a migrant caravan and crosses the border into your nose where they're funded by George Soros to humiliate me by going into your lungs. And that's not good. Not good. So please, wash your hands. Don't get the Chinaman virus or the Mushu flu or General Chow's plague. All right? I just did a great job. All right. That is my impression. Now, let's talk about your wonderful son, Max, whom you take every weekend to check out telephone poles. Yes. And some people apparently, you tell me, have a problem with this. They don't get it. What is wrong with these I don't know. I won't curse. Won't curse because it's for charity. But are these the same idiots who, want to open up Fuddruckers and go to the beach and get everyone sick again? Listen, I want you and I want Max to know that I think telephone poles are the coolest. I mean, I'm a little more of a fire hydrant guy, but I love telephone poles. They're great. And they're not just for peeing on. They're fun to look at. I totally get it, Max. Not only that, but Max, I wrote a song about telephone poles. I'd like to do it for you right now. Telephone poles, telephone poles. Let me get my lyrics. Telephone poles on a sandy plain, telephone poles. Let me start over. Telephone poles, telephone poles. Telephone poles on a sandy plain, telephone poles in the pouring rain, telephone poles on an empty road, telephone poles that aren't up to code, telephone poles that are kind of strange, telephone poles near a mountain range, telephone poles in an open field, telephone poles through a wet windshield, telephone poles, telephone poles. Telephone poles that are quite consistent. Telephone poles that are socially distant. Telephone poles in the local flora. Telephone poles that look like a menorah if you look really close. Telephone poles with a pale complexion. Telephone poles through a cool reflection. Telephone poles with foreboding clouds. Telephone poles that are well endowed. Telephone poles, telephone poles, telephone poles and a cute baguette, telephone poles in silhouette, telephone poles when you look up high, telephone poles and the clear blue sky. Get it? I know he likes blue sky. Telephone poles with some pretty words. Telephone poles with a bunch of birds. Telephone poles that are old and small. Telephone poles on my living room wall. I like telephone poles. Telephone poles. Telephone poles. Telephone poles when it's way too dark. Telephone poles with a weird birthmark. Telephone poles with a guy on top. Telephone poles that kinda went plop. Telephone poles in a busy town. Telephone poles in Charlie Brown. Telephone poles that just want to have fun. Telephone poles in a black hole sun. Won't you come and wash away the rain? I digress. Telephone poles, telephone poles, telephone poles that are super groovy, telephone poles in a werewolf movie, telephone poles in a lovely scene, telephone poles and the mighty Queen, telephone poles by the railroad tracks, telephone poles for my good friend Max. What's his tag? Gotta go!